Donald Trump is always going to go back to his comfort zone: racism and xenophobia. Yesterday, the Trump campaign posted this image online with the caption, "Import the third world, become the third world." It shows a typical suburban home on one side, which is captioned, "Your neighborhood under Trump." And on the other side, there's an image of migrants at a shelter in New York City with the caption, "Your neighborhood under Kamala." Today in The Atlantic, Charlie Sykes wrote about that post, saying, "The neighborhood post went beyond Trump's fixation on migrant crime to highlight his campaign's embrace of the great replacement theory, the fear that Black and brown migrants will displace white Americans in the voting booth, the workplace, and a neighborhood near you." Joining me now is Charlie Sykes, co-founder and former editor-at-large of The Bulwark. Also with me is Angela Rye, co-host of the podcast The Native Lands Pod and CEO of Impact Strategies and the former executive director and general counsel to the Congressional Black Caucus. Charlie and Angela, it's great to have you here to talk about a really unfortunate sort of, I won't even say development because it's been going on for so long, but reality in the GOP. Charlie, I'd like to start with what you wrote in The Atlantic today. And at one point, Republicans sort of still tried to call this immigration, but it seems so obvious at this point that this really is about the great replacement theory. Does it surprise you? And do you think it is at all a liability for voters that Trump is going to have to win in this election?
Well, obviously, he's not trying to persuade swing voters. He's trying to inject more fear and motivation to his base. And I understand that some people will say, well, he's always been doing this. And it's true. He's been playing this card since he came down the golden escalator. And even before that, when he was pushing the birtherism conspiracy theory. But what is striking about this is how blatant the racism is and how, in fact, it comes from the campaign itself. If that post that you were just talking about had appeared on a white nationalist website or a Trump supporter, you could shrug it off. But this is the Trump campaign itself. And I think it's an indication of the way they're amplifying and escalating a message that not that long ago, I think in American politics, we would have recognized as crossing the line of blatant racism. And on Earth 2.0, this would be dominating the news cycle. We'd be talking about Willie Horton on steroids, but because it's Donald Trump, it's just another day that ends with Y. But there's no question that this has become a central theme of his campaign. If you watch any of the ads, if you see the social media, if you listen to Donald Trump, who basically says, well, not basically, he said yesterday that America's become a third world country. This is a constant theme. Now, again, not new for him, but you can tell that he's moving beyond dog whistles to foghorns. And it's not a coincidence that he is trying to tie this carnage to the first Black woman candidate for, the possibility of a nominee for president, a woman with a Jamaican and Indian heritage, that he's playing all of these cards. And you're absolutely right. What he's doing, rather than talking about his vision for the future, is he's going back to play his greatest hits or his ugliest hits.
Yeah, and Angela, I'd love to get your thoughts on two aspects of this. One, what Charlie's talking about how running against Kamala Harris has reawoken Trump's worst racist tendencies, but also the sort of the even more pernicious element of this, which is he's trying to stoke He's trying to further a racial divide within communities of color, right? By saying Black people, these immigrants that are coming over the border trying to steal your jobs. He's using racism to gain favor with a group of people that he has already established himself as having a long and racist record amongst.
Yeah, I think what's hard about this is there is a part of the Black community. There's a part of the brown community. There is a part of Asian Pacific Islander communities that struggle deeply with what is happening in this country. And there are issues that have worked to combat or to traffic in. They're taking your jobs. They're taking your opportunities. They're not paying the same amount of taxes as you, because we're talking about communities of color that have been hurting for hundreds of years. And so what has been a successful tactic for the Republican Party long before Donald Trump is this boogeyman theory. And for the boogeyman theory, sometimes it's an individual and sometimes it's a class of people. In this instance, it is a class of people. We are talking about migrants. That term, third world, is normally used to talk about Asian countries, African countries, and Latin American countries. That is not by mistake. Him saying your neighborhood under me versus your neighborhood under Kamala is not by mistake. That othering he's been doing since birtherism with President Obama is absolutely the thing. You said that he reawakened it. It was never asleep. And the sad part is there are people who are both fans of his and foes who still have that underling of this person that may be getting ahead, even though I've paid my dues, even though I've been here. What we've got to do is address the elephant in the room, and I would dare not call it a boogeyman. The fact is there are people who need to flee political persecution, who need to get out of what is very tricky politics in their countries, and there are folks who are coming here for a better and a brighter day. And there are a bunch of us who don't all agree on immigration. What we know is that Donald Trump's way of doing this is highly dangerous. It is highly violent. We saw it already in his first administration. And we got to be very clear-eyed about the fact that he just doesn't like other. And that is the same thing he did to President Obama.
Yeah, the otherizing is happening across the board everywhere. Yeah. And in this case, he's weaponizing it to stoke racial resentment. I mean, Charlie, when people, it's like there's been this constant drumbeat since Harris ascended to the top of the ticket from the right wing, where folks are saying Donald Trump needs to focus on inflation. He's like standing there with the sweating groceries to stay his stage right. And yet it's like there's no stopping the essence of Trump, right? Like this is fundamentally who he is. And the hires that the Trump campaign announced today, including bringing back Corey Lewandowski, who literally wrote a book called Let Trump Be Trump, suggests to me that reining this in isn't actually going to be the play heading into November. It feels like it's going to get worse.
No, and your setup really captured the moment, because you look at that scene where he had all of the charts about inflation. That is the message. That is the message that Republicans and professional aides want him to do. What you saw was a Donald Trump who is incapable and completely uninterested in staying on message. What you saw was Trump being Trump. And so, first of all, that was not really a press conference. It was this rambling stream of grievances, insults, fabrications, and gibberish, which we've now gotten for pretty much the last 3 weeks. And I agree with you. I don't see any indication that that's going to change. You can see the campaign trying to make him talk about the economy like they did in North Carolina, like they did today. And he just can't bring himself. One other point. Attorney George Conway just posted a little while ago, that apart from being deranged, Trump is an idiot. For a guy who is supposed to be a successful businessman, his ignorance of basic economics is kind of jaw-dropping, and that was on display as well. And I'm going to be interested to hear, the on-the-record or the off-the-record reaction of Republicans looking at him and going, what are we going to do with this guy? We've bowed the knee to him. We've joined ourselves at the hip with him. Do we really want to put this man back in the Oval Office? Where's he taking us? I think it's pretty clear by now.
Yeah, like his grasp of basic math and the fact that it's hard to
more than 100%.
The immigrants are taking more than 100% of jobs. He's working on a different, maybe like just a different time-space continuum, a different sort of mathematical set of standards than the rest of us are. But Angela, as he's trying to sort of, to go back to what we were talking about just a second ago, as he's trying to stoke division between lately arrived immigrants to the country and those who have been here longer, especially in communities of color that are slightly more established domestically, he's also undermining that very attempt by taking on the woman who could be the first Black South Asian president of the United States. And the racism isn't even latent. It's explicit. At one point in the press conference, he said that Kamala Harris was unbelievable in terms of her badness. He's called her stupid. He's called her radical. I mean, he talks about her intelligence all the time, trotting out some of the most poisonous tropes about African Americans in this country, a long, long history we have of that, hundreds of years worth. And for Donald Trump, he cannot quit it. And I wonder what you think, whether you think that the whistle is loud enough for everyone to hear at this point.
Charlie said it earlier, and I used to say it all the time during his first campaign, and that is Donald Trump doesn't use a whistle. It is a foghorn. Right. It is signaling to the grossest fears in this country, the very foundation of them, you already mentioned, Alex, this stuff didn't just come out of nowhere. The reason why Black folks were targeted for slavery was because there was this idea that we were somehow more submissive and could be coached into and beat into this because of ignorance. Our brains are smaller, all of that. None of that is true, and all of it is what he plays into. What I think is the truth is Donald Trump deeply fears how brilliant Kamala Harris is. So he's trying to psych himself up for this first debate and the debates to follow. He's trying to challenge her in the press because he knows that he can go on the stage of any campaign rally, any press conference, say whatever he wants. He won't be fact checked by most networks, right? He's not even fact checked on the debate stage. The Presidential Commission said, hey, you know what? For those facts, forget about it. It's just entertainment at this point. He knows that if Kamala Harris goes toe to toe with him with facts and with her record, that he doesn't have a shot in hell. That is what we're really up against. I think what's scary to me, and Charlie, you mentioned this as well, that Donald Trump is dumb. He's not really very bright. I hate to say it, but it's clear that at least half of the American electorate is right there with him. That is scary, but I think that we would be also very silly, perhaps pretty ignorant, if we turn a blind eye to what happened before. In 2016, that same electorate, at least the Electoral College, thanks to that thing, right? They brought him into the presidency. He got sworn in with that ignorance that he announced his campaign with. The very thing we're talking about today, the very thing this story is about, Charlie, is this xenophobia. He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and drug dealers. That is the same thing he's doing today because it works. So we've got to challenge ourselves about how to make the truth work more than the fiction and the fear.
Yeah, that's so well said. I mean, also, look, demographic change is complicated. Change is complicated.
And
what Trump has done is exploit the fear around change and brought out the worst in the American public in that respect.